Welcome everyone, Costini here with some essential early game tips for Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, or Total War Warhammer 3 in general. Now this video is being recorded on Legendary Very Hard battle difficulty, but you can take what I am going to say in this video and apply it on pretty much every single other difficulty in the game. In fact, you're going to have, generally speaking, a far easier time pulling it off, but there are some downsides, if you will, from playing on lower difficulty, because if you're playing on lower difficulty, the AI factions will be significantly more passive, especially if we're talking about battle difficulty, because that determines how well the AI does in auto-resolve. Now I'm going to play pretty much all of this on Legendary Very Hard. I'm not going to fight any manual battle. If there is a point where I have to fight a manual battle, I'll just go over here and lower this to easy, but I'm going to try and get through as much of this as possible on Legendary Very Hard. I'm not going to fight any battle manually. I would make this video 40 minutes long, just by the battles alone. So, Forgrim has an easy campaign start, but it can be deceptive. It can also be a campaign start where if you hesitate, if you're playing too passively, it can get pretty hard. The reason behind this is due to a number of factors, and especially on higher difficulties. You've got Warzag over here. Now, what Warzag's always going to do, he's going to take these guys out, confederate them, march north, take out Barrack Var, and then he's going to come for you, especially on higher difficulties because of AI bias. Then you've got Skarsnik, who also hates you. You've also got Tretch, Craventail over here, and you do have the Scabby Eye over here as well. So you have 3 major legendary lords, 2 of them greenskin lords, so very, very powerful ones, as well as a number of minor factions that you do start a war with. You're also kind of on the clock because you also have other issues that can prop up in the long term. Queek, Scarbrand, and others, Malagor, for instance. Though some of those can work in your favor. But basically, in this campaign, like a large number of campaigns throughout the game, you are rewarded for being extremely aggressive and not passive. And that's the key thing. In a campaign, if you're going to succeed on higher difficulties especially, you need to be aggressive. But you also need to be aggressive in a smart way. So I'm just going to toggle the Fog of War again. And I'm going to open Diplomacy. This is what you should do at the beginning of every campaign, but especially with a campaign where diplomacy matters, because diplomacy does matter with the dwarves. So you can see I have a non-aggression pact and military access with Barrack Var. They're not currently at war with anyone, but that will soon change. Ideally, you would save them, but that's not necessarily the best campaign plan. Now, one of the things I'm going to do very quickly here is get the non-aggression pact and trade agreement with Zufbar. Or I could skip out on the non-aggression pact and just get a bit of money, but to be quite honest, it might be worth even getting a military access with them. So that's going to give me a bit of income every single turn, though Zufbar is generally going to be wiped out by Vlad.
Yeah. Welcome.
Then we have the situation with Karl Franz. He's friendly towards me, I have a non-aggression pact, and one of the things I can take advantage of is do this. Go to him, get the trade agreement, get some money. Military access would be useful, but your relationship with him is going to improve naturally by what I just did. It's going to go from 15 to 30 by just declaring war on Kazrak. And here's the thing about those kind of things. The AI will always have more money than you, so you want to take advantage of that. Kazrak starts over here. The chances of him coming for you are low. You don't want to start wars with factions that are close to you, but if it's that far away from you, there is no issue whatsoever. Then we also have Vlad von Karstein himself. He starts a war with Tempelhof. So one of the things you can really benefit from is actually getting a bit of money or a non-aggression pact from the very start of your campaign. Personally, I'm going to go with the money. So this way, I've gotten some diplomatic dealings done. I gained some money from Vlad. I'm at 6,000 income. 6,000 money already. Now, I start with a tier 1 settlement, but I can turn it in tier 2. What I want to do in this situation is, since I'm playing the dwarves, what I want to do is get this clan barracks unlocked. I also want to get the gem mine shaft. You want to get an economic building out as quickly as possible. Though the structures you're going to want to build will obviously depend on the race you're playing with. If you're playing the greenskins and you start with the tier 1 settlement, for instance, and you have a barracks, eliminate it and get the growth building. Okay, so those are just some initial moves. when it comes down to it. Now let's talk about military conquest. In this particular case, I have the Bloody Spears. You're always going to have an opponent to deal with. Now, I also share this opponent with Skarsenik. And one of the objectives here is to eliminate one of the big early game threats that can emerge in this campaign, and that's Skarsenik. So what I'm going to do is take my army here. I don't have any siege equipment. I do have some jar bombers, but they're kind of worthless. And I'm just going to auto-resolve it. Generally speaking, I, however, want to stress this out. If you're playing a hard campaign start in general, or you're playing a campaign on a high difficulty, my strong recommendation is you fight all your early game battles, unless you're playing a race like the Warriors of Chaos. And even then, you might want to fight some of those battles, because you'll just get a better outcome. Not just in terms you'll take far fewer casualties, but also in terms of the fact you'll get more experience, you'll be in a better situation. But in this case, just for demonstration purposes, I'll auto-resolve. So, auto-resolve that. Now, post-battle, what do I want? Well, I can drink to get victory. I can also get some money, oath gold. I'm gonna go with this because I need the growth. That is one of the important things as the dwarves. You need every advantage you can get in terms of growth. Hopefully that is going to be changed very shortly. Now, over here in terms of the post-battle options, I had some things to bear in mind with a lot of campaigns, dependent on the race you're playing with. For some races, it will just be better to occupy it. For some, it would be better to loot and occupy it. For others, you sack it and then you occupy it. Since this is a tier 1 settlement, I lose absolutely nothing except some damage to the structures, which I don't necessarily care about too much. Again, but the money I'm gaining as the dwarves is not necessarily significant here. But some races would benefit from sacking settlements a great deal. Others would benefit from occupying, and some would benefit from just looting and occupying it. Depends on the post-battle options. If you need, a lot of races have replenishment from looting and occupying a settlement, so that's something they may want to take advantage of. But in this case, I'm just going to occupy it because I don't want to damage these buildings. I get the growth building, and I recruit one unit of dwarf warriors with great weapons, because I'm going to need that their power over here in a battle. They have a good amount of armor piercing, though they're lacking the shields, and a regular unit of dwarf warriors. At this point, you should always get campaign movement range and inspiring presence for every legendary lord, with maybe a handful of exceptions, but you should always get this skill. The reason is you want that experience per turn for units. If for heroes, if you have replenishment, you increase it. If you have mobility, you increase that. So in this case, I have mobility, and I'm gonna get this skill. If you're gonna get training on a hero, it may not be worth to do so. And I'm also gonna start research as well. For quite a few races, by the way, in the game, when it comes to research, you're gonna want to fight every battle that you have available in turn while not researching anything, because there's a chance that you can gain an ancillary that gives you extra research. Now, that's what I've done here. Okay, all well and good. But there are some other opportunities as well, dependent on how I want to view things. At this point, I could do something else as well. And this is something I would probably recommend you do in a lot of campaigns. So, I'm going to move Thorgrim out, and I'm going to recruit another lord. This may not necessarily be the best decision in this particular campaign, but it is generally a really good decision for a lot of campaigns. I'm going to go with the Rune Lord because he's got magic. This is one of the benefits that you may have in quite a few campaigns. I'm also going to transfer him all these wounded units so he can get the replenishment. Units replenish more in settlements than they do outside of them. Though, so bear that in mind when it comes to it. I'm also going to recruit the units I mentioned. And that's it. I end the turn. Now, sometimes, depending on where you're starting, how your starting position is, how it looks like, and what units you can recruit, you might want, from turn 1, with your second lord, to start global recruitment. In this case, it's not necessarily the best decision. I could have done it, but the units that I could globally recruit right now, dwarf warriors and miners with blasting charges, are not units that I actually care about in this particular example. In other examples, like if I can recruit Black Ark Corsairs from turn 1, I'm certainly doing that, though obviously Dark Elves don't have global recruitment. But you get the idea. It's units that are meaningful. In this case, I'm gonna have to wait until I get to tier 2 until I can get the meaningful units, until I can start pumping artillery, and so I don't really care in this situation. Now, here's what I do here. I transfer these units back to Forgrim's army. I move him to attack the settlement. This is the value of a second army. You don't need it for the battle prowess, though obviously having a lord that's going to have some magic skills, starting the leveling process for him, is obviously going to be beneficial from the very start of his campaign. But whenever an army takes a settlement, they obviously consume all their remaining movement points. By having a second lord from the very start of this campaign taking over the settlement, then that simply means that Forgrim is free to move even further. And this is a huge benefit in a lot of campaigns. Because, for instance over here, if I took the settlement to Forgrim, maybe I have enough movement points to keep going onward over here to take the high place.
What?
I would just be short of it with him, but obviously Forgrim does have that movement range benefit because of his engineer, so I'm sure he could manage it. But in some other campaigns, you would obviously want to just get a bit more movement. Maybe even want to put force march for him. So for instance over here, I'm just going to move Forgrim to the very edge, recruit some units here. Let's get some miners with blasting charges in this particular case. Destroy the barracks, that's redundant. I want this barracks as high level as possible, so I'm going to be forced to get down one from the main settlement and issue a commandment. I didn't pause the research, which obviously I should have. Now, commandments will depend on a race by race basis. For the dwarves, the growth is the important bit. That's the thing you're struggling with really the most. Keep in mind, I still have this post-battle benefit for him that's giving me control and growth in this entire area. Now, let's see what happens over here at the end turn. I'm pretty close to the settlement. Maybe a bit too close. But no, it does happen. And this is the thing about how to play the game in general. You anticipate your enemy. I know Skarsnik is at war with this faction. I know he's going to want to take out one of their settlements. It would have been better had he taken their other settlement, I'm not going to lie with you, to you. But over here, taken out. Now, it's a bit long that it's taken Warzak to get that confederation. I would have actually expected it earlier than that. This is on the highest difficulty. So now, Skarsnik, his entire army, which is weaker than mine, is in that settlement. He does obviously have a garrison. He does have a military force that is capable of fighting me, but I should be able to win the battle. So now he's at war with the mutinous Gits. If I had the vision with the mutinous Gits, what I would be doing at this point would be going to them diplomatically and saying, hey, how about you pay me a fortune to declare war on him? But in this case, I'm just going to declare war on him. I'm sending Forgrim. Not enough to just auto-resolve it, not on the highest difficulty. But consider the army situation. The only unit he has that's actually worth it in any way is the Ragnarok. And keep in mind, I don't just have Forgrim's army, I also have this other army, which I'm going to move over here to support Forgrim. Transfer the units, and let's see what that auto-resolve situation is. Oh, a victory. Now, of course, this wouldn't be an ideal scenario, and you don't want to go for it. Like, in a normal campaign, you should fight this battle at least. Your units may be a bit more damaged if you've auto-resolved your way to this point, but obviously this battle, losing this many units is not an ideal situation. When it comes to auto-resolve situations, here are things you should know. The questions you should ask yourself. Is it worth auto-resolving or not? I personally detest a lot of these pointless, meaningless battles. I hate them. I understand some people love the battles. For them, the battles are the most important thing in the game. For me, the battles are the worst part of Total War at the moment. The tactics are simplistic. The AI is not really a challenge. I run in circles around them, so I don't enjoy going for loading screens and spending 10 minutes of my life fighting a pointless battle that I know I'm going to win with ease. But the question you got to ask yourself in auto-resolve on any difficulty is, what kind of damage is your army going to take? Crucially, can you recover from that damage? Now, the dwarves don't have good casualty replenishment by default, so that's one of the problems they have in their campaign, so they're not going to recover from the damage. And also, how many units are you going to lose? You don't want to lose any units, or you also don't want your units to be highly damaged. So in this case, auto-resolving the situation would be a really bad idea. Now I could fight this battle, but just for the purposes of this video, for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to set the battle difficulty to easy. And if I just encircle and go back again, decisive victory, Skarsnik is eliminated. Basically, I've eliminated the big threat over here. Fun fact about dwarves: as long as they win a battle a turn, that effect and its duration gets improved. Now, maybe sending that army over here was not necessarily the wisest idea, because right now I can't use it for recruitment purposes, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Gonna get a rune of speed. And again, I make the mistake of not pausing research over here. Get tactician, because I'm going to be using a lot of ranged units going forward. I will want to send that army back home. Now, at this point, I do want to look at the diplomacy situation and see what kind of choices have presented themselves. A bit of money from a military access with Zufbar. Still no military access with Karl. No ward there. Nothing happening there. Just gonna set that battle difficulty high again. So I've eliminated Skarsnik's army, means I can take his capital, means I can deal with the Bloody Spears. All issues are resolved. And I did this by turn 3. He does still have his garrison. He does obviously still have his army. I still have to deal with these guys over here. But basically at this point, no one is really gonna stop me. In fact, all the units I recruited here are kind of meaningless. The only reason I recruited them is obviously to deal with Skarsnik himself.
Lord of Clan Borgrim.
That's just a couple of turns. What would I do after this? Well, you look all around. You understand the situation you're in. I know Tretch is to the east. I know Wurzag is to the southwest. I need to eliminate one of them. If I go after Wurzag, Tretch is going to come in this province from the east, sack it, and I don't have the forces to defend both flanks. I can fight Wurzag, but it's a difficult battle. So the better plan in this case is, and this is something you should do on a lot of campaigns. You have, well, let's call him an ally, though in this case it's not an alliance, but you have an AI faction that's friendly towards you. That's going to be at war with your foes. You know that an enemy is going to attack from your flank. You may wish to defend that flank to help your ally, but your ally can soak the damage. So it's a better idea in this particular situation for me to ignore what's going to happen, to ignore the plight of Barakvar. It can be difficult to defend because of the terrain. Ignore the plight of Barakvar and just go after
Onward.
go after some other factions.
Worst.
Warpstone.
Okay. Now, those are some interesting decisions over there, diplomatically, when it comes down to it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is eliminate the Bloody Spears completely. Take the World Edge Archway. Don't even recruit more units. Send him back here. And try and figure out a way to get enough money for the artillery shop. Well, there is a way. I go over here.
In your pitiful eyes. That knowledge alone.
And I ask them for money for a faction that is not close enough to be a major issue to me, and likely never will. And there you go. Enough money for the 2 structures that I actually do need in this campaign. Get more miners, deal with Skarsnik's capital, and then march my forces to deal with Tretch. Get some quarrelers, some artillery over here finally. Like, use the money that I'm gaining here. Once I encounter Ungrim, one of the things, by the way, I can do once I take Mount Gunbad is actually try and help Ungrim, or just ignore helping him, because that might be in my interests. And then deal with Tretch, give the territory to Emmerich, all of it, let him deal with that, march to Karakazul, get in contact with them, take Black Crag, deal with Warzak. It's turn 4. One of the biggest issues in my campaign has been dealt with. The faction I started with, I'm going to eliminate one of these. I don't need quite 2 of them. I need the economic buildings more. And let's also scout around here. Like, which factions do I know over here? Okay, I know the border princes, right? Or do I? No, I actually do not. Slaves of Zard, the Red Eye, Reaping Death.
You need me? Before you said...
Clan Vermin, maybe.
The nation called darkness.
Now!
Well, no faction to make deals with, unfortunately, at this particular point. But you always look at diplomacy to see, okay, where can I benefit diplomatically with one faction or another? Another thing to mention, by the way, when it comes to lords over here, is that you always want to spend 2 points in these skills, and then you want to save up point and get 3 skill points in either an army ability, in this case Quarrelers, because I know I'm going to get those units, and then save up for your special skill line. It can be earlier than this, can be level 10, it can be even earlier than that, but you want to save up points, because over here I have 4 skills I want to get, right? So I need to save up 4 skill points, and I'm going to get this at rank 12. I guess I could just spend an extra point to get this particular skill, but it depends on a hero by hero basis, because obviously these skills are significant. Hero capacity for all of these heroes, artillery benefits, runesmith income, etc, etc. And I just keep marching onward. That's the campaign situation. Now, ideally you'd be recruiting every turn, but I know in turns I'll be getting some extra units. Long-term prospects, what do? Well, Forgrim's always going to keep marching forward. You don't want to march with him back to recruit units. What you do is you use your second lord to recruit units, then you march that lord to your main army, and you transfer them over. So over here, once I get a bunch of Quarrelers in this army, I'm going to take this army, transfer him to Forgrim, and then use that second army to recruit more units, stay on the defense, because my territory is vulnerable here from all the factions that do hate me in this side of the world. Use defense. If opportunities arise for that second army to take the offense while I'm building artillery and Quarrelers for it, sure. And that's how you play a campaign. By the way, it is a bit overkill how many units I've recruited here. I didn't need the miners here. They're a bit pointless to actually recruit. I just did it for, a better situation and not result. But practically speaking, outside of like those early dwarf warriors that I recruited and the miners of blasting charges, all these units are fluff and a waste of money. That's the thing. You want to be careful with money. You want to push your economy to the brink, but you also want to be careful with money. And those are some of the useful tips about how to start your campaign. Be aggressive, be smart, know your limits, know your benefits. You can't let the AI get ahead of you. It has a lot of advantages. If you let it seize the initiative, like imagine if I was playing passively here. Imagine if I didn't go after Skarsnik at this point. Well, he would take the entire province and then declare war on me. You can't let the AI dictate the flow of your campaign. If you do so, you're finished. This is one of the reasons why it's better to let Var die to the annihilation that Warzak is going to visit on them than to try and stop Warzak. Because you're just playing Warzak's game there. It's actually better if Warzak comes and attack you, because he's not gonna attack you from here or use the Underway. He's gonna attack your capital. You can't ignore it. He may feel he's substantial enough, but the capital has a pretty powerful garrison. Sure, if Warzak is determined, but you can't play your campaign on the idea of what tips. You should never build garrison buildings in any settlement, because you're wasting the potential. If you feel an enemy is going to attack a province, ask yourself, can my army defeat it? Can I send an army to defend against that? If the answer is yes, ask yourself the question, is it worth to send an army to defend that? If the answer is no to that question, you just don't build anything in the settlement. It is important that your main army keeps moving. You'll earn more money, get more experience. Like over here, what I would do at this point, take Mount Goodbat, deal with Tretch, march here. I would not march back. If you're marching back and forth, you're wasting time. You don't have time to waste. You have a weaker economy, fewer recruitment slots. You don't have the benefits AI, the many benefits AI has. What you can take advantage of, what you do have on any difficulty versus AI, is aggressiveness. Use that. Be aggressive. Don't be suicidal, but be aggressive. Quasine here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.